Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some r/EntitledPeople for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions at the end, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Boomer 7998, entitled With a Side of Stupid. This is my first post here. I think my story fits. I was the electronics department manager for a, well, now defunct big box toy store 15 plus years ago. Normally, my interactions with customers were never more than a few minutes. This particular day, I was helping a customer that wanted information about several video game consoles and game recommendations. My store manager paged me through the headsets we wore. I informed her I was with someone and would follow up with her when I was free. I did hear some commotion in the background but thought nothing of it since it can get loud in the store. She paged me again a few minutes later. I repeated my situation. She informed me that she needed me to come to the return counter. I let her know that I would be there when I was finished with the customer. She paged 4 or 5 times over the next 10 minutes. I heard a woman almost yelling at her each time I was paged. I couldn't make out what was being said, but whoever it was didn't sound happy. I'm finally available after the 10 minutes and let my manager know that I'm on my way. I don't receive a response. I arrived at the return counter a few seconds later. It's calm and quiet. I ask my manager what she wants. She tells me she took care of the customer and everything is good. I asked again because it must have been important. My manager informed me that a customer wanted to exchange her Nintendo 64 because we gave her a bad console. My Nintendo 64 inventory hadn't changed in the past couple of weeks. I knew that something was off. One thing my manager didn't know was that I had done warranty work for Nintendo prior to relocating and working there. I knew, and still know, the warranty verification phone number by heart. I called the number, entered the serial number, and listened. I was not surprised with what I heard. I replayed the verification and placed the phone on speaker. The message played, the console was no longer eligible for return or repairs. The warranty expired 2 years prior, and a contact the store was purchased from. Walmart. My manager just stared at me. I told her there's nothing I can do with it. She eventually said the customer was extremely upset and wanted to make her happy. I hope that lady enjoyed her brand new Nintendo 64, and in my opinion, my manager wasn't very bright and didn't learn from her experience. I left for greener pastures a couple months later. You know, I've always kind of wondered where a lot of the entitlement comes from, and seeing posts like this from, a few decades ago, things become crystal clear. A lot of the entitlement actually just comes from the fact that they could get away with it. They could walk into a store, make a massive storm, and then the next thing you know, manager eventually caves and hands over $200 worth of store merchandise just to make the customer shut up. So instead of that behavior being corrected and they learn not to pull that kind of shit, instead they actually learn, oh, I can get away with this if I make a big enough scene. And while yeah, it could definitely be argued that OP should have been there sooner to assist with that, at the same time, the manager should not have just blindly handed over $200 worth of store merchandise to shut someone up. And if someone walked into a store without their receipt and with an open box, that return should have been declined. I can only imagine that manager probably did not get good sleep last night when she realized that she got conned out of an N64. If this was common practice behavior, I'm less shocked now that that big box toy store from 15 plus years ago is now defunct. Blood Efficient 2913. Old friend expects to live with me for 3 months for free. For context, I, female 19, did a year abroad where I met a girl I'll call Hygh, female 21. We got close very quickly, but I was in a bad place at the time and I realized being friends with her was making it worse. I was in active addiction at the time and she fed me drugs because I was more fun that way. She had a very codependent relationship with me and had a full-on mental breakdown when I returned to my country. She's also very mentally ill, has never held down a job for over a month, and is very irresponsible financially. I helped her a lot with money. I spent over $2,000 helping her with rent/groceries. As for now, a month ago, she decided, without telling me, that she was going to move to my country. She had met a man online who lives an hour away from me and thought it could be nice as she would be able to move close to me and him. I told her that I didn't think it was a good idea as rent is extremely expensive where I live and the man she met online still lived with his parents. Also, didn't have a job. She didn't listen to me. booked a plane, and came here. As she arrived, she managed to spend all her savings, which were not a lot to be fair, on Ubers and drinks at the club. She came over to my place a week ago to eat and was on the phone with her boyfriend fighting the whole time. They allegedly broke up because he thought she was irresponsible, and she decided that she was going to stay with me until she got an apartment. It's impossible to find an apartment in less than 2 to 3 months here, as she didn't have a place to stay anymore. I told her she could stay for a week, max, but not more, as I'm in law school, in exam period, and I need my space to focus. I also just don't like living with someone, and my parents, who are paying my rent, don't want to pay for someone else to live in my apartment. Now, she's been here for a week, eating all my groceries, bringing people over, doing drugs in my apartment even though I'm clean, not cleaning the place, etc. I told her she had to go, and she called me names, saying I was a bad friend for letting her on the streets. I had to call her mom so she would pay for E to get a hotel and a plane ticket to go back home. I feel like a parent to someone who is 3 years older than me. Now we're not talking, she's been bad-mouthing me to all our friends, and I have to deal with her mom calling me every day to ask me to check on her poor girl. OP, this might come as a shock, but I don't think this person's actually your friend. But in all seriousness, this is someone you need to get out of your life ASAP. You've done the work, you've got yourself clean, you're in law school, you're doing everything you can to push forward. Don't let this person wiggle their way in their life and stick around. You're already doing the right thing by kicking them to the streets. You're not being a bad friend by doing this. In fact, they're being a bad friend by putting you in this situation. They're the one that decided to move cross-country in order to fucking, live with someone they met online that just fell apart immediately. They're just incredibly irresponsible, and as you've surmised, it's not your responsibility to clean up their messes. Hell, you're clean, you've been through the ringer, you're rebuilding yourself, and what do? They're doing shit in your apartment. They're bringing random people over. You don't know what kind of people are being brought over. So yeah, you're definitely within your right to kick them out. I also keep forgetting this isn't an Am I the Asshole type subreddit, and I'm actively trying to just justify OP's actions when that is entirely not needed here. Representative Key 136. Got Karen today in a parking lot while my toddler screamed at the back seat. Just need to vent. Today was one of those days where you just think, wow, people really suck sometimes. I was parked, getting out of my car, when the wind blew my door open gently. It barely touched the car next to mine. No visible dent, just a possible mark. I immediately acknowledged it and offered to exchange info. When I explained it was the wind, not to avoid responsibility, but just to clarify that it wasn't a careless act, she cut me off with, No, something like this happened before and it cost $2,000. My car is new. At that point, it felt less like she was assessing real damage and more like she was trying to guilt trip and manipulate me. She even pointed out a completely unrelated mark further down and insisted that was from my door too, which made no sense based on where the door touched. And then it escalated fast. She started filming me and my toddler, who was crying in his car seat, scared and confused. She threatened to call the police. I was trying to stay calm, juggle my phone, pull up my insurance app, and soothe my child. And she just kept the camera on us. I could feel my son's distress behind me, and that's when I lost it emotionally and called 911 myself. I didn't feel safe or respected and needed a neutral record of what was happening. After I gave her my info, I went back into the car to comfort my son, who by then was screaming and crying from the stress. I looked up, and she was still filming us. I was literally just trying to calm my scared toddler, and she kept her phone pointed at us like we were some kind of show. That moment broke me, and it didn't stop there. When I showed her that I'd call 911, she told the police I had banged on her window, which was absolutely false. I simply held up my phone near the window to show her the call screen. She also accused me of locking my child in the car with no air circulation, which was so far from the truth. I was right there, window cracked, AC on. It was just another manipulative accusation meant to make me panic. She even lied about having the same insurance as me, USAA, when I first mentioned mine, but it turned out she was with Geico. Just more weird, unnecessary power moves. I know she probably assumed she could intimidate me because I'm an immigrant, English isn't my first language, and I look like someone who might not push back, but I didn't back down. I gave her my info, I made the call, and I stood my ground. My husband showed up by Uber when I called him, and for the first time in the whole interaction, I felt not alone. I'm still feeling the stress hours later, but I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't yell, I didn't film her back, I didn't escalate, I protected my son and kept my dignity. Because I want him to grow up knowing, we do not back down from unfairness, we do not let people shame us into silence, and even when our hearts are pounding, we speak up. Thanks for letting me unload this here, just need to breathe it out somewhere real. Yeah, car door dings suck. It's just not fun to come back and see that your car has a giant nice new dent in it because someone was careless with your door. However, that's not what happened here. The wind grabbed the door. Shit happens like that, and it's certainly not fun to be put in this situation, but OP did everything they possibly could right, from immediately trying to exchange information and doing everything that they could to make sure the situation went as smoothly as possible. But instead, the person they were dealing with did nothing but attempt to escalate further and further. I've certainly dealt with my fair share of car-related headaches, and I've never seen a door ding cost more than $2,000 to repair, because normally all you need is just a dent removal kit and pull it out and boom, everything's fine. It's incredibly rare for a door ding to take out a scuff of paint. Normally what ends up happening is, yeah, there could be some paint traded, but normally, because of just how cars are painted, the amount that you see traded is from the door sill. Oftentimes, the clear coat and paint are far thinner on the inside edge of the door, so when that makes contact with another car, that bit of paint is usually what's first to go because the clear coat and actual just paint layering is a lot thinner. It's pretty rare for automakers to do the same kind of treatment and care to the interior parts of the paint than they would to the exterior panels. More often than not on exterior panels, the actual body of the car will dent before the clear coat comes off, at least from what I've seen. Now, sure, there probably are some edge cases that'll prove me wrong, but still, in general, I highly doubt that it's going to be a $2,000 repair for a door ding like that. My guess would be is, as OP stated, she was trying to intimidate and bully OP and trying to really just escalate the situation as much as possible, and things just further spiraled out of control with her absolutely abhorrent and disgusting behavior. Good for OP for standing up for themselves and their child and not letting themselves get walked over by someone who's just clearly having way too much bullshit going on and making it other people's problems. Like, good God. If you're ever in an accident, always make sure insurance is handling everything, because last thing you want to do is take someone's word for it or let them, string you around and pull bullshit like this. Just remain calm, exchange information, don't engage, and let insurance handle everything else. That's what they're there for. Sin the Sinister. Am I the entitled Karen? Last week I was in a horrible car accident. A truck rolled through a stop and we couldn't avoid the collision. All of the airbags deployed and my daughter was traumatized. Fortunately, no one was injured and we all walked away. At work the next day, my boss learned I didn't get evaluated after and called me an idiot. She said with my luck, I'll have a stroke or an aneurysm. And that's when my light bulb turned on. I have a clotting disorder, literally the opposite of hemophilia, and didn't even remember until she said that. Y'all are gonna call me stupid and say this is fake because what kind of bimbo forgets they have a clotting disorder? But let me put it into perspective. I have type 1 diabetes that is a daily pain in my ass. I have a severe cinnamon allergy, to the point that if I touch it, I have a moderate reaction for 24 to 36 hours. And if I ingest it, I'm miserable for 72 plus hours. I have general anxiety and PTSD, which means I work hard to maintain my mental health. Before my hysterectomy, my periods would have me completely doubled over in pain and unable to get out of bed. Pregnancy was not kind to me. And on top of learning I have an enzyme deficiency that renders anesthesia useless, C-section with full sensation, it also damaged the right side of my heart. I have constant back, neck, shoulder pain because I'm a very small woman with a G-cup chest. All this was well established before we learned only a few years ago about my factor 8. So, it's all very at the forefront of my conscious, but the anti-hemophilia tends to fade into the background until it becomes relevant. I messaged my doctor letting her know all the facts, that I'm fine, just a little banged up. Her nurse called me back and told me to get to the ER for a Doppler. Great. My community hospital is great. I love the doctors, and they have won several awards for the care they provide. The ER? Well, I wouldn't trust them with the care of a cactus. They're wildly incompetent and unbelievably arrogant. I had to threaten a nurse with assault charges to get her to stop touching me without consent. I was accused of drug seeking because I asked for pain meds after a second floor deck collapsed under me and I was in a wheelchair. My friend was roofied and I told the nurses that she needed a talk screen. She was unconscious and vomiting. I was with her the entire night and she drank less than 4 drinks over a 5-hour time period. They deemed that not to be cost effective and decided she needed a CT and a biblical lecture on making better choices. I'm a compliant patient and take my health very seriously, so I went to that god-awful ER. They had just finished my Doppler and I told the tech that I needed juice, type 1 diabetic. She gave me the call button and told me a nurse would be in soon. I waited a few minutes and pressed the call button. Explain I'm a diabetic with a low sugar and need juice. To which I get the incredibly helpful, okay. About 10 minutes later, I'm still sitting there, juiceless. So I repeat the process. Button, explain, okay. Another 5 minutes and in walks registration. I tell her that I need juice and she walks out for a moment, then walks back in with a nurse. The nurse also has no juice. Where is the juice? Is there an evil warlock hoarding all the juice? Did POTUS sign an executive order banning it? Juiceless nurse checks my blood sugar and it is indeed low at 51 milligrams per deciliter. And then she appears, my angel of salvation. She walks in with 4 ounces of orange juice. It's a start, but with the juice shortage, I'm willing to take what I can get while they quest for more. She makes sure I have the call button and tells me to press it if I need more. Spoiler alert, I needed more. I press the call button and repeat the process. Button, explain, okay, crickets. 5 minutes later, I try again, but this time my call is ignored. 10 minutes later, I've had it. My vision is starting to distort and I'm experienced enough to know that means the threat of a seizure looms on the horizon. I try one last time to get help. It's like they rehearsed it. Everything played out exactly the same. So I put my shoes on, grab my purse, and leave. A nurse asks me, all cheerful, if I'm leaving, and I'm stumbling as I explain that I need juice or glucose or candy or whatever, and they refuse to help me. Her excuse? We're very busy. And all 5 nurses standing at the counter of the nurses' station nod in agreement. Then she says what may be the shittiest statement possible in this situation. But you're welcome to leave. Excuse me? Yo, a medical professional, allegedly, want to send a diabetic seizure risk with documented low sugar away from a medical facility. I'm sorry, is there more to the juice shortage and you can't risk a possible leak? So I left. I drove home and chewed about 12 glucose tabs before my sugar normalized again. But now, in the light of frontal lobe health and the certainty of the juice shortage, I need to ask if I was the entitled Karen. Nah, you're good. They should have definitely been, doing what they could have to prevent a diabetic patient from going into fucking glucose shock. Like seriously. It's just juice. It's 5 seconds. They gave you 4 ounces of orange juice, told you to press the button if you needed more, found out that you were not in a great position as a diabetic at 51 milligrams per deciliter. That's not good. Anything below 70 is in the danger zone. They had that documented. They told you to push the button if you needed more. You were starting to feel hazy. And they just continued to ignore you. If there's anyone in my audience who works in an ER or has had experience in the ER, maybe y'all can shine some light on this? Because this can't be normal, right? Like, to me, this feels like a sprint at Olympic speeds towards medical malpractice. I grew up with cousins that were diabetic, and my mother for a time was type 2 diabetic. So I am spookily aware of what diabetes can do to someone at a short-term notice if they're not paying attention to their blood sugar. Ironically enough, the night that I actually fractured my arm that I was telling about last episode was the night that my mom found out that she was type 2 diabetic. Can you guess how? That's right. After my 3rd or 4th attempt to try to tell her my arm was really hurting, I found her passed out on the couch and she was non-responsive. Because to me, it seems like a massive catastrophic misstep that they allowed a patient to leave at 51 and go and drive home. That feels not okay to me. Indigo Heart 2003. My entitled cousin stories. Our grandma is a stranger for me. If you're curious, we've covered a few of Indigo Heart stories in the past and some of the other Entitled People episodes, and this usually covers their entitled cousin Mia, who we're going to continue learning about. This happened before my grandma passed this year. For context, I've moved 2 times in a lapse of a few months. The first time I moved with my cousin Mia and our grandma because Mia's father, the sororite, brought the woman he cheated on my aunt with while she was undergoing chemotherapy to live in my aunt's house in less than 6 months after she passed. Yes, that's my aunt's house, not his. The sororite didn't even pay 1 brick, but he has got the house because my aunt passed, and if Mia doesn't go ahead with the succession of the title, I've heard it costs more than 1 million ARS, she can do nothing about it since the sororite hid the deeds from her. So she also has to sue him for them in all case. She practically lived a few weeks at her boyfriend's place, but his whole family actually hates her, so she ended up moving in with me. She had a huge argument with her dad before leaving the house. I took our grandma with us because I was the one taking care of her full time since my aunt passed, and didn't want my mom to assume that responsibility. I also mistakenly had the expectation that Mia was going to help me take care of her since we were living together. I was able to move that quickly because of a regular client of the store I worked at back then, a 60-year-old woman whose son passed a year ago at that moment, heard I wanted to move and was willing to rent me her son's abandoned house at an incredible price. I just had to clean the house, help her pack up her son's stuff, and trim the abandoned garden. The rent was informal, without any contract. I know it's illegal and risky, but I did it impulsively, and surprisingly, it turned out well because we're currently involving a contract, so I can buy the house by installments, and my mother and stepdad are willing to help me pay for it. But it's something that takes time, and it's not relevant here. I'm just getting ahead of some questions and comments because I know that moving usually takes more time and involves paperwork. This situation was just a great stroke of luck because this woman and I became very close, and she only wanted to get rid of her son's house because it was too painful for her to keep it. Well, we moved once we cleaned the house, yes, as you can imagine, Mia barely helped me to clean, and took our grandma with us. It didn't take long because the house was in good condition despite being abandoned. It was just dirty, and the grass was very long. I used a part of my savings until I got a new job in that city, and since the rent was pretty low cost, I didn't really have a problem with paying for most of our bills and expenses. The problem started when Mia started bringing her boyfriend more and more often, to the point that he would stay with us for more than a week, which wouldn't have been a problem if only the guy brought money to buy his own food or pay for his part of the consuming. The guy even had the audacity to want to charge us for gas the few times he drove us both in his car. Every single time I asked Mia to please tell him to somehow contribute if he was staying with us, she started crying about how alone she felt, how the whole world seemed to be against her, and how she couldn't take it anymore. It got worse once she wasted up all our savings and started neglecting our grandmother when it was her turn to take care of her. Once I even came home to find out our grandma hadn't even had lunch. This one was the last straw for me. I told her to find a job, otherwise I was kicking her out. This happened after the almost baby story, which is one I'll have to hunt down and find for another time. My mom wasn't supporting Mia in this one because I threatened to cut her out of my life if she intervened again to defend her. This triggered a mental breakdown in Mia, who started ranting about how unbearable our grandma was, how I always have been her favorite granddaughter while she was neglected by her, and how our grandma was practically a stranger for her, so she couldn't care less about what happened or not to her. Our grandmother practically raised us both, and she never liked how my aunt, uncle, and Mia made fun of me when I was little, so she naturally stood up for me. Mia wasn't exactly her favorite granddaughter, also because she was always capricious and selfish, but our grandma never neglected her at all. She even paid for her XVs. Hopefully someone can give me context on this because after Googling, I could not figure out what this means. Bought her one of her expensive dogs, a French bulldog. She always gave her gifts of important dates and was affectionate with her. In fact, Mia was the distant one here. She never liked her grandma at all, but she would complain about her unfair favoritism every time she saw her spending time with me. This attitude of hers always hurt my grandma. I have to admit, I lost it here, and without sugarcoating it, I would have left her visually unrecognizable if her boyfriend hadn't intervened. We had a huge fight, and even with that, I didn't kick her out. But it didn't take long for them to leave because her boyfriend didn't like the house, and she didn't want to get a job anyway. So she just moved back with her dad and his new girlfriend and took her good-for-nothing boyfriend with her. A few weeks after Mia left, our grandma was admitted to the hospital and passed a few days later. My mom was taking care of her in that moment. The same night my grandma passed, with my mom crying next to me, Mia yelled at me, demanding the house keys so she could take the stuff she had left there. So I gave them to her, just because in that moment I only wanted her out of my sight. Well, silly me, because she stole more than $400 worth of items, including our grandma's blood pressure monitor. I didn't report her to the police because my mother asked me not to do it, and the police wouldn't have helped at all anyway. Argentina, lol. If I hadn't been in shock at that moment because of my grandma's death and my mom hadn't been next to me having a mental breakdown, I probably would have ended Mia's life right there in the hospital. Now she's selling her dead mother's jewelry and the stuff she stole from us to afford food for her and her boyfriend instead of getting a job. And he still charges her for gas every time he takes her somewhere. She also tells everyone a sad story of how her whole family disowned her because she was depressed and needed some help. The worst part is she could have just got a job, saved up to pay for the lawsuit, and sue her father for the stolen deeds because we were willing to help her with that. But Mia wasn't willing to work, and she squandered all the money she had at McDonald's. So yeah, God gives food to the anorexic. The fuck does that mean? I moved again in less than 1 month after my grandma passed. Now I'm living with roommates in a city that is more than 4 hours away from my hometown, just looking for peace and new friends. Mia is blocked from everywhere, so I hope not to hear anything from her again. I can't put my finger on it, but the vibes feel off. Like, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but there's just something about this where it doesn't scratch at my brain right. But that honestly could just be my exhaustion getting to me. Like, don't get me wrong, Opie's cousin and their boyfriend are just very clearly not great people. Like, just gross behavior here. And in the past, we have covered OP's previous posts and the escapades of Mia and her boyfriend and their shitty uncle, but there's just something about this that isn't quite scratching my brain right, and I'm wondering if it's just the cultural disconnect as well as a language barrier disconnect, because English is more than likely not their first language. So I'm wondering if maybe I'm just picking up on things that aren't really there because of the cultural barriers, but let me know what you think. My brain's itchy and I can't explain it. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.